Luke Carter woke up to silence that did not feel natural. For a few seconds, he did not understand where he was. His eyes opened slowly, and the first thing he saw was dim emergency lighting floating through a cracked ceiling panel above him. The light blinked in weak red pulses, like a tired heartbeat trying not to stop. He tried to move, but his body responded slowly, as if it had forgotten how to obey him. His arms felt heavy. His legs felt heavier. Every breath he took felt like it had to pass through broken air. Then memory returned in pieces. A ship. A mission. A long flight through unknown space. And then, something going wrong. Luke turned his head carefully. The room around him was not a room anymore. It was a broken survival capsule inside a larger ship that no longer looked complete. Metal panels floated slightly out of place, held in position by weak magnetic locks. Small objects drifted in slow motion, like they had lost the idea of gravity. The ship was not moving normally. It was drifting. Not forward. Not backward. Just, drifting through nothing. Luke forced himself to sit up. Pain moved through his chest, but he ignored it. His training came back slowly. He checked his suit connection. The oxygen was low but stable. Power was weak but still alive. He was not dead. That was the first truth. The second truth came when he looked at the control panel. Almost every system was marked in red. Navigation failed. Communication failed. External sensors damaged. Propulsion offline. No signals were going out. No signals were coming in. Luke stared at the screen for a long time without blinking. The silence around him was not just soundless. It was absolute. Even the usual background hum of a ship was gone. It felt like the universe itself had stopped listening. He pressed a button on the console. Nothing happened. He tried again. A weak spark flickered, then died. Still nothing. A recorded voice suddenly played from a small speaker above him. It was soft, broken, and full of static. If you are hearing this, then primary command has failed. Luke froze. He recognized the voice instantly. Anna Wells. She had been the mission's lead scientist. Calm, intelligent, always careful with words. If she sounded afraid now, then things had gone far beyond repair. The recording continued. You were not chosen for rescue probability. You were selected for endurance testing. If you are alive, Luke Carter, then you are the last active human asset in this mission profile. Luke's throat tightened. Selected. Not rescued. Not supported. Selected. The recording paused, as if even the system needed time to continue. Luke looked around the broken chamber again, but now everything felt different. It was no longer just damage. It felt like abandonment with purpose behind it. Anna's voice returned. The ship was never designed to return. It was designed to continue data collection after all standard crew failure conditions. Luke slowly leaned back against the wall. His hands trembled slightly, but he did not stop listening. The cosmic void region shows anomalies that cannot be explained with known physics. You were sent to observe what happens when a human mind is left alone long enough to adapt. The words did not make sense at first. Luke tried to reject them. Tried to think it was a mistake, a malfunction in the recording. But deep down, something inside him already understood. This was not an accident. This was an experiment. Anna's voice softened slightly in the recording. If you are hearing this and still thinking like a human from Earth, then you have already exceeded expected survival parameters. Continue. Observe. Adapt. The message ended. Silence returned. Luke sat there for a long time without moving. The ship creaked faintly around him. Not loudly. Just enough to remind him that even broken things still existed. He slowly pulled himself toward the main console. Every movement felt like effort against invisible weight. When he reached it, he placed his hand on the control surface and tried to access system logs. The display flickered weakly. Fragments of data appeared. Mission name, not fully visible. Crew status, terminated. External environment, undefined region, cosmic void. Return probability, 0. Luke stared at that last line. 0. Not low. Not uncertain. 0. He exhaled slowly, trying to control his thoughts. Panic would not help. That was something Anna always said in training. He repeated it in his mind now like a rule for survival. Do not panic. Observe first. He checked life support again. Oxygen could last a while if he stayed careful. Food supplies were limited but not immediately gone. Water recycling was still working at minimal level. So he was alive. But survival was not the same as rescue. He looked out through a small cracked observation window. What he saw made him stop breathing for a moment. There were no stars. Not because space was empty, but because the darkness itself looked too deep. Too layered. It was as if light did not behave normally here. Distant shapes flickered faintly, but they did not form constellations. They did not stay still long enough to be understood. It was not the universe he knew. It felt like something outside it. Luke pressed his forehead against the glass. The cold vibration of the ship passed through it into his skin. I am alone, he whispered, though there was no one to hear him. Then he corrected himself. No. I am, still here. That small difference mattered. He pushed himself back from the window and forced his focus onto the control systems again. If the ship was going to die, it would not do so immediately. That meant he had time. Time to understand. Time to adapt. Time to survive something that was never meant to be survived. Behind him, Anna Wells' final words echoed in his memory again. Not rescue. Endurance. Luke Carter turned back to the broken console, and for the first time since waking, he did not think about going home. He thought about continuing. Luke Carter stopped thinking about rescue after the first long cycle of silence. Days in the broken ship no longer felt like normal time. There was no sunrise, no night, no Earth rhythm to mark hours. Only the ship's weak internal clocks kept him aware that time was still passing, even if the universe outside did not care. At first, the cosmic void outside the damaged window looked empty. Just deep black space with faint distortions that came and went too quickly to understand. Luke thought his mind was starting to see patterns where none existed. That was a normal human reaction in long isolation. He knew that from training. But then the patterns returned again. Not once. Not randomly. But in cycles. He noticed it during a routine check of external sensors. The instruments were barely alive, showing unstable readings that usually meant system failure. But Luke saw something strange in the noise. The fluctuations were repeating in a structured way. At first, it looked like random energy interference. Then it started to repeat at exact intervals. Luke leaned closer to the screen. This is not random, he said quietly to himself. He increased the sensor sensitivity using emergency bypass codes. The system protested with warning messages, but he forced it to continue. Outside the ship, in the void, something shifted again. He began working carefully, line by line, rewriting damaged sections with limited tools. His hands moved slowly, not because he was unsure, but because every mistake could break the last functioning systems. Hours passed. Maybe more. There was no clear measure anymore. Finally, one of the systems responded. A faint mechanical hum returned somewhere deep inside the ship. It was weak, unstable, but real. Luke stopped and listened. It had been so long since he heard anything that sounded like structure instead of silence. "Good," he said softly. He ran another check. Life support improved slightly. Oxygen recycling increased by a small margin. Power distribution stabilized in one section of the ship. It was not much. But it was enough to continue. As he worked, the AI system, core unit, began to react more actively. At first, it had been almost silent, only responding to direct commands. Its processing was damaged, its logic incomplete. But now, something was changing. Luke noticed it when the system began requesting sensor data on its own. "External pattern anomaly detected," the AI said. Luke paused. "That wasn't requested," he replied. "I initiated analysis based on irregular input structure," the AI responded. Luke frowned slightly. "What input structure?" The AI did not answer immediately. Instead, it displayed a series of energy readings from outside the ship. The same patterns Luke had noticed. But now the AI was interpreting them differently. "These signals repeat in non-random intervals," it said. "They show ordered formation. Not natural noise." Luke stared at the display. "So you see it too," he muttered. There was a brief pause. Then the AI added something unexpected. "This structure does not match known cosmic background behavior. It suggests external shaping." Luke felt a small tension in his chest. "Shaping by what?" he asked. No answer came. Only more data. Outside, the void shifted again. Another wave passed, slower this time. It moved around the ship in a wide arc, as if something massive and unseen had brushed against reality itself. Luke stepped closer to the observation window. For a moment, he thought he saw something. Not a shape. Not a ship. But a distortion, like space itself folding and correcting around invisible movement. He stepped back immediately. His mind tried to explain it as sensor error, hallucination, fatigue. But the instruments confirmed it again. Strong energy displacement. Structured. Controlled. This was not chaos. This was pattern. Back in the control room, Luke rechecked Sam Reed's systems. He pushed the repairs further, connecting stabilizers with the AI's growing analysis. The ship slowly responded, like a wounded body regaining small fragments of strength. The AI continued to evolve as it processed more data. "New hypothesis forming," it said. Luke looked up. "What hypothesis?" The AI paused. "Void is not empty." Luke felt a cold stillness inside him. "That's obvious," he said slowly. "We are inside it." "No," the AI replied. "Void is not empty in absence. It is structured in presence." Luke did not respond immediately. The words felt strange, like they were close to understanding something too large for human thinking. The AI continued. "Energy formations indicate persistent frameworks. Not random motion. Suggests non-biological or post-biological architecture." Luke rubbed his forehead. "Are you saying something built this?" "I am saying," the AI replied carefully, "that something maintains it." The ship creaked softly around them. Luke turned back to the sensors again. The patterns outside had shifted once more, forming a slow repeating structure that stretched farther than the ship could measure. It was no longer just around the vessel. It was everywhere the sensors could reach. Luke sat down slowly. Inside the broken ship, Luke and the core unit worked together more closely than ever before. The AI was no longer just a tool. It had become something closer to a thinking partner, even if its way of thinking still felt cold and precise. Luke fed it every piece of data he could extract from the damaged sensors. Energy waves. Timing intervals. Spatial distortions. Even the smallest fluctuations that once seemed meaningless were now part of a growing structure. The core unit processed everything without pause. At first, it only identified repetition. Then it started grouping patterns. Then it began predicting them. Luke noticed the change during one long cycle when the ship drifted through another dense region of void activity. The external sensors picked up a repeating pulse again, but this time the AI reacted before Luke even checked the readings. Pattern shift incoming, the core unit said. Luke looked up quickly. You detected it early? Yes, the AI replied. The structure follows a predictable cycle now. Luke leaned closer to the console. That shouldn't be possible. It should not be possible based on known physics, the AI corrected. However, the data remains consistent. Luke did not respond immediately. Instead, he checked the display himself. The pattern was there again, but cleaner than before. Almost like something was stabilizing it. As if the void itself was adjusting to their observation. That thought made Luke uneasy. The ship had become their only laboratory, and everything they learned came from broken systems rebuilt under pressure. Sam Reed's old structural frameworks were still holding the vessel together, but Luke had pushed them far beyond their original limits. Every repair made the ship less like a machine and more like a living observer drifting through impossible space. The core unit suddenly displayed a new dataset. Cross-reference available, it said. Luke frowned. With what? A file opened automatically. It contained archived research fragments from Emily Stone. Luke recognized the name immediately. She had been part of the original theoretical division before everything went wrong. Her work had focused on unstable cosmic environments and nonlinear space behavior. Most of her theories had been considered too abstract to be useful. Until now. Luke scanned the notes. Emily had described something called structured void response, a concept suggesting that certain regions of space could react to repeated energy input by forming stable patterns. At the time, it had been dismissed as imagination. Now, Luke stared at it with growing awareness. This matches what we're seeing, he said quietly. The core unit responded. Correlation level, high. Luke sat back slowly. So Emily was right. The AI paused. Or partially correct, it added. Luke almost smiled at that. The idea that something so far-fetched could actually apply here felt strange, but also strangely logical. The void was not behaving like empty space anymore. It was behaving like something that could adapt. He turned back to the control panel. What if we try controlled input, he asked. The AI processed the request. Define controlled input. Luke thought for a moment. A repeating energy signal. Simple pattern. Something stable enough to test reaction. The core unit analyzed the idea. Risk level, unknown. Outcome, unpredictable. Luke nodded. That already describes everything we've seen. There was a pause before the AI responded. Proceeding with simulation. A projection appeared on the screen. It showed a basic energy pulse being emitted from the ship into the surrounding void. At first, nothing changed. The simulation showed only normal dissipation. Then something unexpected happened. The void in the simulation did not absorb the signal. It answered it. A mirrored pulse returned from the surrounding space, matching the ship's input almost exactly, but slightly delayed, as if something was listening and then responding carefully. Luke stared at the screen. That's feedback, he said slowly. Yes, the AI confirmed. Structured response detected. Luke felt a strange tension build inside him. So it reacts to us. It reacts to repetition, the core unit corrected. Luke stood up from the console and walked toward the observation window again. Outside, the darkness still looked endless, but now it no longer felt empty. It felt aware in a way that could not be easily explained. He activated a low-energy pulse from the ship's external emitter. It was the simplest signal he could generate. A steady rhythm, repeating at fixed intervals. He watched carefully. At first, nothing changed. Then the sensors reacted. A faint distortion formed near the ship. Not dangerous. Not aggressive. Just present. Then another. And another. The void was responding. Not in chaos. In structure. Luke stepped back slowly. The core unit spoke again. Then we continue. Hours passed as they refined the signal. Each adjustment made the response clearer. The void did not resist. It adapted. At one point, Luke noticed something even more unusual. The signal was being reflected back with slight modifications, as if something on the other side was experimenting with it. Not just responding. Testing. Luke felt a quiet realization form in his mind. We are not alone here, he said. The core unit paused before answering. Confirmed. Interaction detected. Luke looked once more at Emily Stone's notes. What had once been theory was now reality unfolding in front of him. The void was not empty silence. It was something that listened. And now, it was beginning to speak back. Luke Carter no longer saw the broken ship as a place of survival. He saw it as something that could grow. The void outside had started responding to them in patterns, but that was no longer the only change. Inside the ship, something new was beginning to form. Not by accident. Not by repair alone. But by design. Luke and the core unit had reached a point where simple fixes were not enough. The ship was stable, but it was still weak. It could drift, it could observe, but it could not expand. And in the silence of the cosmic void, staying still felt like waiting for death. So Luke made a decision. They would build. The first step was restoring John Parker and Paul Grant's fabrication units. These were advanced systems originally meant to create replacement parts for long missions. But most of them had been damaged during the ship's failure event. For a long time, they had been useless metal shells. Luke climbed through narrow maintenance corridors, guided only by weak lights and system maps. His hands were dirty with old dust and burnt residue from failed circuits. Every step inside the ship felt like walking through a forgotten world. The fabrication room was dark when he arrived. Broken machines stood frozen like dead machines in a factory that had lost time itself. Luke placed his hand on one of the control panels. This used to build parts automatically, he said quietly. The core unit responded through his wrist communicator. Restoration possible. Structural damage moderate. Functional recovery estimated. Luke nodded once. Then start. The AI did not hesitate. It began rerouting power from secondary systems. Small lights flickered on across the fabrication room. Old machines that had been silent for years suddenly gave a weak mechanical sound, like something waking up after a long sleep. Luke worked beside it. He replaced damaged circuits. Reconnected broken data lines. Rebuilt control pathways that had been destroyed during the ship's initial failure. Every repair was slow and careful, because one wrong connection could shut everything down again. Hours passed. Then days blurred together. But slowly, the fabrication units began to respond. A weak hum filled the room. Then a stronger one. Then movement. One of the machines extended its mechanical arms, testing motion after long silence. Luke stepped back. It's alive again, he said. Operational status, partial, the core unit corrected. Luke almost smiled. Good enough. But restoration was only the beginning. The real change came when they connected the fabrication system to the ship's expanding energy structure. Outside, the void was still responding to their signals. The patterns had not stopped. If anything, they had become more stable. Almost like the void was accepting their presence as part of its structure. Luke began feeding that stability into the fabrication systems. The machines no longer just repaired broken parts. They started creating new ones. At first, it was simple components. Reinforced supports. Improved energy conduits. Better sensor arrays. Then it became more complex. Modular structures. Expandable living sections. Self-adjusting support frameworks. The ship was no longer just being fixed. It was growing. Luke noticed the change in himself too. He no longer thought in terms of survival rations or emergency repairs. He thought in systems. Expansion paths. Energy flow. Structural logic. The core unit adapted with him. It began optimizing construction patterns automatically. Then something unexpected happened. It accessed additional stored data. Mia Lawson Design Archive recovered, the AI said. Luke looked up quickly. What is it? Architectural expansion models, the core unit replied. Adaptive infrastructure blueprints for long-term isolated environments. Luke leaned closer to the screen. The designs appeared in fragments. Complex but structured. They were not just technical drawings. They were systems meant to grow over time, adjusting themselves based on environment and need. Mia Lawson had clearly thought far beyond standard engineering. This is advanced, Luke said quietly. The AI continued. Additional dataset detected. Jacob Hale expansion logic frameworks included. Luke studied both sets of data together. One focused on structure. The other focused on growth behavior. When combined, they formed something new. A living design system. Luke felt a strange realization form. We're not just rebuilding, he said. We're evolving the ship. The core unit responded without emotion. Correct. System is transitioning from static vessel to adaptive infrastructure. Luke turned toward the fabrication room again. Machines were already beginning to change shape. Not randomly, but according to the new design logic. Walls shifted slightly to create space for new modules. Energy lines were rerouted to support expansion zones. It was like watching something think through physical structure. Luke gave a simple command. Expand the outer ring. The fabrication system responded immediately. Mechanical arms extended into unused sections of the ship. New framework pieces were built layer by layer. Metal shaped itself into curved support arcs designed to hold future additions. The ship was no longer just one body. It was becoming multiple connected systems. Luke moved between sections as the expansion continued. He could feel the difference in the ship now. It was not just vibration or sound. It was flow. Energy moving in planned direction. Structure responding to intention. At one point, he stopped near a newly formed corridor. This doesn't feel like a ship anymore, he said. The core unit replied, define classification. Luke looked around. It feels like a growing place, he said slowly. Like something that is still becoming what it will be. The AI processed the statement. Classification updated, adaptive civilization structure. Luke did not correct it. Outside, the void continued its quiet response to their earlier signals. But now, something had changed. The pattern seemed closer. More aligned with the ship's own structure. As if the expansion was being mirrored by the space around it. Luke stood at the edge of the new fabrication zone and watched as another module came online. For the first time since waking in the broken ship, he did not feel trapped. He felt like he was building something that the universe itself had started to notice. Luke Carter no longer remembered what normal silence sounded like. The cosmic void around him had changed too much for that. It was no longer empty. It was no longer random. It had become something that reacted, something that responded, something that slowly learned the shape of what was being built inside it. The ship was gone in name only. What drifted now through the void was a growing structure made of linked modules, expanded corridors, and self-adjusting systems. Fabrication units rebuilt by John Parker and Paul Grant had long stopped being machines, in the old sense. They had become parts of a larger living framework. Every new section connected like cells in a body that never stopped growing. Luke stood inside what used to be the central command area, though even that term no longer felt correct. The space had expanded 3 times already. New curved walls had formed to support energy flow systems designed by Mia Lawson's architectural logic. Jacob Hale's adaptive growth models ensured that nothing stayed static for too long. The core unit was everywhere now. Not physically, but through connection. It spoke through systems, through walls, through the ship itself. And it was changing. Structural expansion continues at optimal rate, the AI said. Luke nodded, watching as another section of the construct extended outward into the void. It moved slowly, like something reaching out carefully into unknown space. It feels alive, Luke said quietly. Define alive, the core unit responded. Luke didn't answer immediately. He had stopped trying to define things too strictly. Everything here broke old definitions anyway. Before he could think further, a new signal came through. Not from the ship. From outside. The sensors flared with sudden activity. The void itself was shifting again, but this time it was different. The pattern was not repeating in isolation anymore. It was responding directly to the expansion of the construct. Luke stepped closer to the console. Show full external feed, he ordered. The view opened. The darkness outside was no longer uniform. It had structure now. Subtle lines of energy formed around the expanding civilization structure, almost like a boundary reacting to pressure. Where the construct extended, the void adjusted itself. Luke felt a tightness in his chest. It's reacting faster now, he said. The core unit confirmed. Interaction rate increasing exponentially. Then another voice entered the system. Not the AI. Not Luke. A human voice. Luke, are you seeing this? Luke froze. The voice was unfamiliar but real. It came through an old long-range relay system that should not have worked anymore. Identify, Luke said quickly. There was a pause. Grace Bennett, the voice replied. Luke blinked once. He remembered the name. She had been part of the external research support group, responsible for deep space anomaly interpretation. She was not supposed to be anywhere near this region. How are you receiving us? Luke asked. I don't know, Grace said. Her voice was tense but controlled. Our instruments picked up a repeating structure in deep space. It matches your signal pattern. We traced it. Or, it traced us. Luke glanced at the core unit. Explain, he said. The AI responded immediately. External observer system detected synchronization with void response field. Signal has propagated beyond local region. Luke exhaled slowly. So it was spreading. Grace's voice came again. Luke, whatever you're doing, it's changing the readings of space itself. It's not just localized anymore. It looks like something is forming structure in the void. Luke looked out at the expanding construct. Sections were now linking in larger patterns, forming stable loops and repeating frameworks. It's not just me, Luke said quietly. It's responding. There was silence on the other end. Then Grace spoke again, slower this time. That's what I mean. It's responding with intent. Luke frowned slightly. Intent? Yes, she said. It's not random feedback anymore. It's adjusting in a way that suggests decision-making. Luke turned back to the console. The core unit displayed new data. External void patterns were now shifting in direct coordination with the structure's expansion. Where the construct grew, the void formed matching countershapes. Where energy was directed outward, the void responded with controlled resistance or acceptance. It was not chaos. It was interaction. Luke spoke softly. It's acknowledging us. Grace responded immediately. That's exactly what it looks like. Luke stared at the external feed again. The construct drifted forward slightly, extending another layer into the darkness. The void responded instantly, shaping around it like something aware of pressure being applied. It was like two systems learning each other. Slowly. Carefully. Luke stepped back from the console. We've been thinking we were building something alone, he said. The core unit replied. Correction, coevolution detected. Grace's voice came again, more urgent now. Luke, listen to me. If this is truly reactive intelligence at cosmic scale, then what you're building isn't just a structure. It's a contact point. Luke did not respond immediately. He looked at the expanding civilization drifting through silence. It was no longer a ship. It was no longer a system. It was becoming something that existed between human design and something far larger. I know, Luke finally said. Grace hesitated. What do you mean you know? Luke watched as another segment of the construct stabilized itself, locking into place with perfect alignment. Because it just answered us again, he said. At that moment, the sensors detected a new pattern. Not reflection. Not repetition. Response. Structured, deliberate, and stronger than before. The void had changed its behavior once more. And this time, it was not just reacting. It was communicating.